Jason and Matt were excited about the new video they were going to make. Their YouTube adventure channel was finally taking off. They'd been part-time urban explorers for the last couple of years, sneaking into abandoned buildings, old factories, and forgotten tunnels. The thrill of it was intoxicating. The eerie silence, the peeling paint, the mystery of places left behind. But nothing they had ever explored prepared them for what they found deep in the woods that night. Their interest in this particular site had started with a rumor being floated on an obscure internet forum. Supposedly, a military medical site, long thought to be abandoned, sat hidden in a remote section of forest near the outskirts of a town about an hour away from where the two men lived. Some users reported the site wasn't abandoned at all. They insisted that strange lights had been seen flickering through the trees at odd hours. A few people, claiming to be from that town, told of rumors that something dark was happening inside, though no one would elaborate on what exactly that dark thing was. The two young men drove as far as they were able before parking their truck on the side of an overgrown path. According to the information they were able to get from the forum, they were still a couple of miles away from the site. Due to the rough terrain, the rest of the journey had to be made on foot, which for them was part of the fun. They took turns filming their journey as they walked deeper into the woods on a barely visible, overgrown footpath. Strangely, the deeper they walked into the trees, the quieter their surroundings became. No insects, no birds, just the crunch of dead leaves beneath their boots. They stopped at the edge of the tree line, staring intently into the clearing in front of them. The facility they'd been looking for turned out to be a cluster of squat, gray, rather run-down buildings. It was surrounded by a 10-foot-high, rusted chain-link fence topped with barbed wire. A sign near the entrance had long since faded, but Matt pointed out the words biomedical research beneath the layers of grime. They exchanged a nervous glance. Matt took the lead as they crept quietly along the perimeter of the chain-link barrier, looking for a way in. They were about ready to give up, when near the back of the facility, they found a section of the fence had been cut and peeled back. Someone had been here before, perhaps some of the people who'd recounted their experiences on the forum. They managed to squeeze through the narrow opening without much issue, aside from Matt snagging his hoodie on a jagged piece of metal. Their breath quickened with excitement. They both lived for the adrenaline rush, the thrill of the adventure. Anticipation made their stomach flutter as they looked around, taking in their peculiar surroundings. The first thing they noticed was the sound. Though at first glance the place appeared abandoned, there was a faint but persistent droning hum that pulsed through the crisp fall air. Strangely, the sound didn't seem to be coming from any one particular area, but vibrated throughout the entire complex. They kept to the perimeter, their back against the chain-link enclosure, as they continued to take in their surroundings. Matt looked around for cameras, something he probably should have done before entering, he thought ruefully. I don't see any cameras, do you? Jason looked around, shaking his head. They both breathed a bit easier. Then, another sound beneath the hum. It was faint, distant, almost imperceptible, yet undeniable. Crying. A child. Jason and Matt exchanged uneasy glances. Probably a fox. They sound like a kid crying sometimes. Jason nodded, wanting desperately to believe his friend. Since neither man was willing to be the first to chicken out, they both pressed on. Moving along the side of one of the buildings, they pressed their backs to the cold concrete wall. From here, they had a clear view of the largest structure in the compound. Its windows were blacked out, but a soft, eerie glow seeped through the cracks in the doors. And then the door opened. Both men flattened themselves against the wall, praying they wouldn't be noticed. Two people stepped out, dressed in expensive tailored suits. Jason drew in a sharp breath. They looked like a couple of famous actors. But they couldn't be, could they? He risked a glance at his friend, who was staring open-mouthed. Jason couldn't remember the men's names, but he remembered his mom would joke about having a crush on one of them. But if it was them, what the hell would they be doing out here? No, it couldn't be them. He prided himself on being good with faces, but the actors he was thinking of would be in their 50s by now. However, the two men who came out of the door couldn't have been older than their mid-20s. But there was something about them that seemed off. They somehow looked too young. Their faces were smooth, vibrant, almost glowing, shining too brightly considering the dim light. The two men laughed as they walked toward a waiting black SUV that neither Jason nor Matt had noticed. While their voices were low, Jason could still make out pieces of their conversation. Years off your face. Not just skin, it's the whole body, pure, the highest quality. The driver, a man in a lab coat, rounded the SUV and opened the car door for the two men. For a moment as he turned, Jason saw a streak of crimson staining the sleeve of his coat. Not fresh, but not old either. This was weird as hell. Surely this wasn't one of those private clinics where celebrities went for plastic surgery, was it? He knew celebrities took great pains to hide the fact that they'd had cosmetic work done, even though everyone could see the evidence right there on their face. However, it didn't make sense that a clinic would be in an old military hospital at the edge of a small, dying town in Middle America. Jason and Matt exchanged a worried glance as the humming noise suddenly grew louder. The crying sound, though muffled, was clearly coming from somewhere in the compound. While they'd come across some weird things during their previous explorations, this experience was utterly bizarre. Not to mention, quite unnerving. Jason felt a chill crawl up his spine. They had to get out of here before they were spotted. He didn't exactly understand what they'd witnessed, but he instinctively knew they saw something they shouldn't have. Matt's voice broke the silence. "Dude, we shouldn't be here." Jason nodded. He could barely breathe as they crept away from the building, careful not to make a sound. Their footsteps were slow, deliberate, quiet. They had almost reached the broken fence when the humming suddenly stopped. An unearthly silence settled over the facility. Then, a metallic clang, like a heavy door slamming shut, shattered the stillness. Then, to their dismay, they heard footsteps, more than one set, coming from behind them, fast. Jason swore. Crap, they'd been chased out of abandoned buildings before, but this time was different, though neither man understood exactly why. Jason hissed at his friend, "Go," as they both broke into a frantic run. The jagged metal fence tore cruelly at their clothes as they scrambled through the opening. Back on the trail, branches whipped across their faces as they crashed through the woods in a panic. The trees seemed to be working overtime to block out the late afternoon sun, making the rough trail dark and treacherous. Jason didn't dare look back, but he knew their pursuers were right there, right behind them, giving an unrelenting chase. The truck was just ahead. Jason fumbled for the keys as Matt yanked open the passenger door. They scrambled inside, and Jason turned the ignition with trembling hands. Headlights flooded the forest behind them. A second vehicle. No sirens. No warning. Just cold, white lights cutting through the trees. Where the hell had they all come from? Their truck roared to life. Jason stomped on the gas, gravel kicking up behind them as they sped down the cracked, deserted road. The lights behind them followed closely for several long, breathless miles. Then, just as suddenly as they had appeared, they vanished. Silence once again swallowed the night. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Jason kept his hands tight on the wheel, his knuckles white. Matt stared straight ahead, his face frozen with shock. Matt finally broke the silence. What the hell did we see? Were those dudes actors or something?" Jason replied. "Weren't they from some old TV show or something? I don't know. Like, it's weird. They're, like, old, but they look really young. Do you think they had plastic surgery there or something?" Matt hesitated. "I don't think the crying was from a fox." Jason shook his head. "Dude, no, I can't." "Kids," Matt's voice was shaky. "What? Do we tell the authorities?" Jason's voice was firm. "Don't tell me they don't know." Matt was desperate. "What do we do then?" Kids were crying. Jason snapped. "We shut the hell up. You know the authorities are aware. Maybe not, like, your local cops or anything. They're just probably told not to ask questions, so they don't." Jason continued. "You know as well as I do, we'll either be written off as lunatics, or they'll disappear us off the face of the earth if people start taking us seriously." Matt sighed. "So, we just try to forget about it then?" Jason's voice softened. "Yeah, we gotta try to forget about it." Please don't forget to subscribe to help us grow. We would really appreciate it.